Welcome to Recovery Radio by Landmark Recovery with your host, Zach Crouch. In this program, we'll discuss the root causes and treatments of alcohol and substance addiction, speak with experts in related fields, and help navigate the road to recovery. Now, here's the host of Recovery Radio, Zach Crouch.
Hello, I'm Zach Crouch, host of the Recovery Radio podcast, your source for addiction and recovery news and knowledge. If you know someone struggling with drugs or alcohol, Recovery Radio is here to help. We are dedicated to providing you with the tools to help you or a loved one take the first step on the road to recovery. Joining us on the show today is Daniel Robertson. Daniel is an attorney in Louisville whose practice includes representing clients who are facing drug and alcohol-related charges. Welcome to the show, Daniel. I'm just grateful that you're on the show with us today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Zach. I'm glad to be here.
So, just in terms of law, how long have you been practicing for?
Well, that's kind of a long story in and of itself, Zach. It should be a simple one, but I originally got my law license in 2010, practiced for about 3 years until I was suspended because of my addiction, mainly. And oddly enough, I didn't pay my bar dues. That's why they originally suspended my license. So, yeah, I'd get a lot of laughs.
Imagine that.
Yeah. I had better things to spend my money on, I guess. But I get a lot of laughs out of that one. So then I was suspended for 181 days, but I didn't initially try to get my license back. Decided I didn't want to practice law. Thought I was going to do something else. Soon realized I didn't know how to do much else. So then I sought reinstatement, starting here about 2.5 years ago, and that's a pretty long process in itself. It takes about 1.5 years. So I've been practicing since my reinstatement for about a year. So, like I said, originally I was admitted in 2010, but I've practiced a total of about 4 years.
Got it. So during that time where you, prior to getting reinstated, you mentioned you thought about doing something else. Has law always been a part of your, sort of passion, or is it something you've always been really, really interested in, or was there something else that you were thinking about pursuing? What was it?
Yeah, law had always been, what I felt like I was called to, really since I was in high school. Didn't really make the decision that I wanted to be a lawyer till about my junior year in college. But several people had told me maybe I should do something in sales or try something in the business field. So I thought about that avenue after my license was suspended. But and I did a few other things, but I just wasn't happy in those. And I think it was good taking the time off. It kind of, reignited my passion for the law.
Gotcha. And you work with a lot of cases related to drugs and alcohol, right?
I do.
Okay.
I would say right now I've probably got, I don't know, anywhere between 30 and 40 between DUIs and drug, either possession or trafficking cases, probably in that range, 30 or 40. Okay.
And are most of your cases at the state level, any of them at the federal level?
All at the state level right now. I'm licensed in federal court, but no, currently don't have any cases over there.
Gotcha. So you alluded to, and you mentioned, you struggled yourself with substances while you were working on these cases. What did that look like?
A train wreck.
Yeah. A dumpster fire.
A dumpster fight. That's an apt term. Yeah, it was bad. It started, my third year of law school. My father had been diagnosed with lung cancer. And, I had always drank, partied quite a bit, I guess. But after, it was during my third year, my best friend growing up, and we had went to college together, lived together.
Right.
He died of a drug overdose a week before the end of my last year in law school. And at the same time, my dad was battling lung cancer, and he died just a few months thereafter.
Wow.
And so it was.
So how many years ago was that?
That was about 10 years ago now. It was my dad died in January of 10. So, yeah, it's almost 10 years.
Wow.
Okay. And that's what kind of not to use that as an excuse, but that's what really started my addiction. I was so depressed that, I felt like I couldn't really go on. I was having a hard time functioning. Started taking pain pills.
Yep.
And then that progressed to heroin, meth. Those were the two that really brought me down.
Because you and I actually met in a slightly different capacity. I was a counselor at Bradford Health Services when it was here in Louisville, and you had come through that program, and that would have been 2010 or 11, somewhere in there, 2012 maybe.
That was in 12. Yeah.
So
you guys couldn't handle me, I don't think.
We were ill-equipped.
Ill-equipped. That was a challenge for sure.
So talk us through that. Did you ever feel guilty, or how did you justify, your actions to yourself when you were going through that phase of using?
I mean, the short answer is I was too high to care. I mean, it progressed to the point where, judges were calling me out on it.
So they knew.
Everybody knew. Yeah.
Everybody knew.
Yeah. I mean, there might have been a few people who didn't know, or,
So you were showing up to like court and hearings drunk or high?
Just high. Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't really drink at all during that time period. It was all drugs. But yeah, I mean, I was. Did
you ever nod off like in the court?
Not in court, but
okay.
People have had to remind me of some stories here over the last couple of years that one woman in particular, a secretary at her office, said that I passed out sitting in a chair in her office one day. Don't remember that at all.
Wow.
So yeah,
that's pretty far cry from where you are today then.
Yeah, it got as bad as it could get.
So when did, we often, I'm a guy who's in I would say long-term recovery at this point. I lived under, I'm sure you did too, this delusion that, if I could just simply get through the day, that, I'll make it. Like, I'll get through it, stuff will pass over, whatever, right? So I'm often, as many people are, the last to know. When did you realize that you had a problem?
Oh, I would say I knew that I had a problem a good 6 months to a year before I, got honest about it and told people that I needed help. When it got to the point where I couldn't go to work if I didn't have dope.
Yeah.
That's when I knew it was, probably before that I probably knew, but
so the physical dependence was certainly there.
Yeah. It didn't matter if I had to be in court or where I had to be. If I didn't have dope, I was going to go get that first,
Right.
That was my priority because I knew I wasn't going to get through the day without it, so.
Absolutely.
And my attempts to quit on my own during that time, I mean, I can recall that fairly vividly, oddly enough, because a lot of it's pretty cloudy. But I do recall a couple of days that I tried to stop and, I just laid on my couch in pain and, crying all day basically and couldn't do anything. So then I felt like, I was really trapped because it was a situation where I didn't want to continue living that way, but I couldn't stop. So, and that probably went on for another few months before I finally reached out for help.
And I think that's pretty common, especially among people who use the particular drug that you were talking about, was that they don't really use anymore to get high. They use it to simply not be well, to just get right, as many people would put it. What were, you talked about this a little bit, what were some of the repercussions of your using? What did that look like for you?
Well, I would say the list of repercussions that I didn't have would be shorter. Much shorter. You name it and it happened, Any consequence from addiction that you can experience, I probably did. I initially went to treatment I finally got honest with the guys I work with. Mm-hmm. They had asked me a couple times. They said, if you're struggling with something, if you're having a problem, just in a generic sense, you can come to us, we'll help you. Right. And I said, I'm fine. And then a couple of weeks later, I finally told one of them, I've got a drug problem. Right. And he said, well, yeah, we all know that. We're just glad to hear you finally say it, Right. But initially, I didn't really have any
And this is the first time that you had told the folks about it?
Yeah.
So this would have been 2012
This would have been in, August of 2012.
Okay.
So I called Yvette Harrigan with Key Lab. And I think Yvette had called me once before. Somebody had called her and said they had concerns. And, of course, I denied it. I'm fine. So then finally in August there, I called her. She got me in down at Bradford.
Right.
Went down there. And so at this point, I didn't really have any. I'd had a couple bar complaints, but nothing that couldn't be handled. And went down there, came back, stayed clean for probably a month. I think that's around the time I met you.
Yeah.
Was coming to the IOP out there at Bradford. Started using again, and it deteriorated so much faster that time. I mean, I went downhill quick, really, really quick. And then didn't pay my bar dues, got suspended, went back to treatment, down to Bradford again, left. After about a day, I just walked out.
Yeah.
Ended up in Minnesota at Hazelden.
Okay.
So while I was at Hazelden, the KBA suspended my license for the non-payment of bar dues.
Okay.
So
it wouldn't have anything to do with the drinking and the using?
No. And there was no drinking at this time. It was strictly drugs. I mean, I was nothing but drugs during that period.
Right.
And I've had my issues with alcohol and everything else too. But
sure,
during this period, it was strictly the drugs. And so that happened. Yeah, it had nothing to do with any bar complaints or anything like that. It was just my own ignorance and not paying my bar dues,
Right.
So then my wife at the time, probably a week after that, filed for divorce while I was up there. I got served with the papers in Minnesota.
While you were in treatment?
While I was in treatment.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So I took a couple hits right there.
Kicking the teeth right there.
It was for sure. It was for the best. I found out later. But so then I came back home from Minnesota, lost my house. She got the house. So I was essentially homeless. Didn't have a law license.
Wow.
Lost my office. Lost,
Did you have a car?
I did have a car.
Okay.
I did have a car. It stayed there at the house for a week or so until I went and retrieved it. But I did have a car. That's basically all I had was a car and the clothes on the back.
Yeah. Wow.
So I ended up moving in with my brother back in Hallsville, where I'm originally from, for a while. So I mean, any consequence you can imagine, I probably had it. Check. Yeah, it's a long list.
Wow. So, some people might call this, just I don't know, a piece of the experience for people who are able to now help out others who have been down similar roads. Because since then, you work with many of your clients to help them find treatment. How does that work? I mean, you're a lawyer, but you're helping people, and I think rightfully so, helping them find treatment, to get places. What does that look like?
It happens in a lot of different ways, really. Occasionally, and actually not very often, this is definitely the exception. A client will tell me, hey, man, this is a problem, whether it be alcohol or drugs or whatever. That's only happened maybe once or twice.
Yeah.
Usually it's a family member will tell me, hey, they've got this problem. Is there anything you can do?
Right.
So that's usually how it happens. And sometimes the court, whether it be the prosecutor or the judge or whoever will inquire about, is this something that's a problem? And that doesn't happen often either. So more often than not, it's a family member who will call me, who has come in with them for their consultation or whatever, will call me later and say, hey, this is a real problem that we need to address. Is there anything that you can do? And I think a lot of the times what they're wanting me to do is to try to get the courts to force them into some kind of treatment, which I always tell them it's not the way to go because, as you and I both know, forcing somebody into treatment.
Yeah.
A lot of time, for me anyway, that didn't work.
Got it. And does, when you get these calls like from a family member, is it typically like, is it the husband or the wife that's calling you, or is it like the mom or the dad, or is it
all of those?
Yeah.
It's usually either a spouse or a parent, depending on the person's age or marital status. But yeah, it's usually always a spouse or a parent.
Got it. Okay. So would a client enter a rehab program before, after, or in place of serving a sentence from the court?
All of the above on that. It's oftentimes, and I'll tell people if this is something that we can address, whether they've just been arrested for a DUI or for drug possession, especially if it's not their first offense, I'll usually tell them, A, if this is a problem, we can address it.
Right.
And B, you need to do it now, because, it's going to look a lot better on your part to go ahead and address this now, so we can show the Commonwealth and the court later on when it comes to, a potential plea deal or sentencing or whatever it is, that that this is a problem, that you voluntarily addressed it early on in this process, rather than waiting until, you were looking at the prospect of jail time,
right,
and then decided to go get treatment or something along those lines, But it kind of happens all of those ways. Like I said, I try to get people in before if I can, and a lot of times it is in place of serving a sentence. There are definitely, we've got a lot of good judges in Jefferson County in particular, and out in the state, who understand addiction and understand alcoholism, and a lot of them really do want to help people. And if they can send somebody to treatment as opposed to jail,
right,
that's always preferable.
So I guess I'm going to ask you, but was it the past year that there was a clause that went through? I think Mothers Against Drunk Driving has something to do with this too, but there was a number of DUIs that if you had in a certain amount of time, it automatically sent you to prison, or took away your license. How does that work, or what happened? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not.
I thought there was more like it used to be if you got 3 or 7 DUIs. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. What they've done is they've changed. So a fourth offense is a felony if it's within a specified period of time.
Which is how long?
That used to be 5 years.
Okay.
So if you got a fourth DUI in a 5-year period, that was a Class D felony.
Okay.
Now they've made that look back 10 years.
Okay.
So, they've really hardened the law a lot in that respect, that, if you had a DUI 10 years ago, that still counts within that window.
Right.
And it could be, the day before that 10 years is up. If you get number 4, you're looking at a felony.
And what does that mean?
You're looking at, a lot.
Time in prison, or
potentially, yeah.
How much? How much time?
A minimum of 1. That's 1 to 5.
1 year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Misdemeanors are crimes that are punishable by up to 365 days in jail.
Okay.
A Class D felony is 1 to 5. So potentially you could get 5 years for a fourth offense DUI, particularly if there's an accident involved where somebody's hurt, or
sure,
if there are aggravating circumstances present, which there are a whole list of in the statute,
right?
That being one of them. You could potentially get 5 years on that.
Okay. And do you see a lot of guys and gals come through that qualify for that? Is there, like in Louisville and Jefferson County, there are a lot of people that
we see several. We see several. Yeah. Okay. I would say right now we've probably got 2 or 3 that have been looking at felonies. And, sometimes we're able to get that amended down to a third offense, to a misdemeanor. Yeah. Where they don't count it as a fourth offense and a felony. But
so I know I know that you're not a therapist, and I'm not asking you to make a diagnosis.
That I'm not, Zach.
Right. But in your time spending, with those kinds of folk, and I'm not saying they're bad people or anything like that, but I am asking you a question about, what is it about those folks though that makes them, I don't know, so sick? Is there traumatic events that have happened? Is it any rhyme or reason that you can point to?
I think it's probably the same thing that made you and I sick. That makes us all sick. It's just the addiction and just no control over it. And some people, we've had one or two who are looking at felonies that still won't go get treatment, which is just baffling.
Spent a year in jail. It's like, nope, I'm not going to go to treatment.
Not going to go. Not going to
Wow.
go. I don't have a problem.
I don't have a problem.
Yeah. I've heard that many times.
Wow.
It's mind blowing sometimes, but
God, man, that's so sad, dude.
Denial can be powerful, I suppose.
Man. So how many do take you up on the offer of seeking treatment?
I would say it's probably around 90% of those
that's a lot.
Yeah, the number is high of those who, and those are the people who admit to me that they have a problem, or like I said, a family member comes to me and tells me it's a problem, and then I'll talk to the client about it. And like I said, it's more often than not them just coming forward and saying, "Look, Daniel, I've got a problem." Believe it or not, people aren't always honest with their lawyer. So
imagine that,
shocking, right?
Yeah.
But I would say most of them that
they're honest enough to tell you that they need help, though.
Sometimes, yeah.
Or at least, be like,
or they are after they've been called down on it by a family member or something. Yeah, so, most of them do.
So one thing I'll say is that statistically, I didn't know this, but it's true. Studies have shown this, that whether a person gets coerced into treatment, right, or does not, that does not equal their effectiveness of being in treatment. So in other words, if you take two people or 100 and 50 of them say, I was coerced into treatment by my wife, husband, whoever, and the other 50% say, I knew I had a problem. There's no correlation between more success with people who say, admittedly, I have a problem versus those that say, I'm here because a family member said to come.
That's actually very surprising. Yeah, that kind of contradicts my earlier statement, doesn't it? When I said that doesn't work, forcing people into treatment. So that's shocking to me, actually.
Now, I think that if I had to take a stab at it, I think that you're probably dealing with a subset of the population, though, who have gotten to that point in their lives where the law and the legal system have really, played a part in their lives. And, the rates of mental illness, antisocial behavior, stints in jail, et cetera, are all part of that equation too. So I can't say if it takes that into consideration or not, but
right.
But those are factors too that you probably have to account for. So,
and I guess when somebody's facing a criminal charge and the court says it's jail or treatment, there's a level of coercion there. But I've seen
willingness.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've seen people succeed though in that situation. So, do
you ever share your own experience with clients?
Always.
Okay.
Always. If it comes up, if they have a problem or think they have a problem, I'll usually always, maybe not on our first meeting, or maybe not the second meeting, but ultimately I generally always do. If my story can help somebody, I'm more than willing to share it with anybody. And at first I wasn't sure about that, whether clients would, be hesitant to hire me because of that or whatever. But I found that it's exactly the opposite, actually, that people appreciate that I know what they're going through. Yeah. And I actually had a client not too long ago who said, man, you just don't know how hard it is to get off heroin. I said, let me tell you a story. Tell you a story. Yeah. So
on the contrary.
I think it's, in some way it makes me uniquely qualified to handle certain cases.
Do clients that you've helped ever come back and just say, man, thank you. I appreciate everything that you've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had several who've done that. And those are the ones who have been the most successful in treatment and in recovery that are really grateful, for especially me sharing my story. That's what I've encountered the most, is that people have come back and thanked me for telling them my own experiences and letting them know that I can actually relate to where they're at and what they're going through.
Absolutely.
I've found that people are very appreciative of that.
Well, and I don't know if this has been your experience, but, some people would argue, it's like, well, I can go through a bunch of classes, I can do a bunch of volunteer work, or, I can be around addicts and alcoholics and really get a sense of, what it is that they're going through. But there is a lot to be said about, kicking dope, and being on a couch or wherever you were and having gone through that experience and knowing that, like, yeah, I've been there, because I think that there's a certain level of empathy that that you can experience by having gone through the pain, physical and mental, of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, I've got a unique perspective on it, and one that I couldn't possibly have had I not experienced the things that I've gone through with my own addiction,
Right.
So yeah, when I have a client in jail who I know is sitting there going through withdrawals, from opiates, I know how painful that is. I wasn't in jail when I went through it.
Right.
So I can only imagine that magnifies the pain and the emotions that you experience. But, I've definitely felt the sickness, and I can vividly recall being down at Bradford, going through withdrawals, hallucinating, sweating, just sick. And so I can only imagine sitting in Metro Corrections going through that.
Man.
It would be brutal. So, yeah, I do think I've definitely got a sense of empathy that I couldn't possibly have without my own experiences.
So, not just the law, but, people who maybe are professionals even. What would you suggest to people who are struggling in the workplace and how to seek help before it does get out of control?
Just be honest, like I said, that was, back 10 years ago when I went through all the 8 years ago, however long it's been now, 7, I guess. I guess 8 when I first started with the addiction. But, I was terrified to tell anybody because, I hadn't been a lawyer that long, and I felt like I was trying to get myself established and prove to people what I could do. And I was having some success in the courtroom, and I felt like if I was honest and told people what I was going through, that it would be the end of my career. That it would be. You've already
invested all this time and money.
Right. I was just terrified that would be the end of me, and so it really took people approaching me. I mean, it was more than once a judge called me up to the bench in court and, asked me if I was okay, asked me what was going on. Obviously I just lied and said, yeah, I'm fine. When, it was clear to everyone that I wasn't. And then, it took some of my colleagues coming to me and saying, we can get you help. Whatever you're going through, we can get you help, And I remember the day that I finally said it and said, I'm an addict. I do need help.
Was it one of those days where you just felt like, was it a huge weight's been lifted off my shoulders, or it was like, oh crap, man, now the cat's out of the bag, or was it a little bit of both?
No, it was really relieving, actually. I mean, afterwards I did kind of think, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have tried,
Too late now.
Yeah. What have I done now? But, like you said, cat's out of the bag, but it already was anyway. I mean,
that's a good point.
I wasn't telling anybody anything that they didn't know.
Like you said, your partners are like, we knew.
Everybody knew.
Yeah.
I thought I was, being sneaky and doing a good job of masking things. I was not at all. So, I mean, that would be my advice for anybody struggling, in the workplace, no matter what it is. Just, people are a lot more willing to help you than you might think, and they really are. Most people truly want to help, and and it's only going to get worse if you're not honest about it,
So, when you mention that to your partners and maybe even other people, is there somebody that sticks out now that, like, you would look back and be like, man, this person, I would have never expected they would have supported me the way that they did, but it was unexpected, but I'm just blown by how supportive they have been. Is there one person or a couple people that come up?
Steve Romines, who I worked for during law school, and have pretty much been with ever since. Steve can be a pretty intimidating guy. I don't know if you know Steve. But,
I don't.
Great trial lawyer, but he can be intimidating sometimes. And so I was really terrified to tell him because I looked up to him so much, still do, and didn't want him to be disappointed in me, and I didn't want to ruin the relationship that I had there. So I actually told his partner first, and his law partner, and then I left. I was at the office. I told him, and then I took off.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's go home to see how this plays out. And Steve texted or called me within 30 minutes and said, "You're going to treatment." And I
don't pass go.
Yeah,
right.
no, you have no options. You're going to treatment. So, he's been tremendous throughout all of this. Very supportive. I definitely wouldn't be where I'm at without him.
That's crazy too. Just, now you mentioned that just because, as you're talking, I was thinking about I think for men, for a lot of guys, it's like, I don't want to upset so-and-so because I look up to them as a mentor, and almost there's some fatherly kind of figure stuff too. And if I let them down, then I'm not a damn thing, but
Right.
being open and honest with those kinds of people, man, like we can learn, I think probably the most about ourselves, because often when we find out, like you mentioned, Steve, we find out that these are just guys too with other, they got their own issues. They got their own problems too. Even though they present and they've got this, bigger than life persona, because a lot of them have to, when it gets down to it, man, they're just trying to make it too.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. And I think, whether somebody has directly experienced addiction or alcoholism, most people know someone who's been affected by it.
Yeah.
You really,
100%.
I've noticed that over the years is that, I don't know hardly anyone who hasn't been affected by it in some way or know someone who has.
Yep.
So, it's, going back to, for someone out there that's struggling, and I know it sounds trite, but being honest is getting honest with yourself, getting honest with other people is really, it's the only way to kick this thing.
Absolutely. So what, when you make a referral to a program, a treatment program that you have a client and you're thinking about, what do you look for, in a program?
Generally, I won't actually refer people to a program. I'm no expert. John Walsh and I talked about that the other day. I said, I'll just send them to you guys and let you guys run with it from there. I don't feel like I'm in a position to tell someone what they need or where they need to go, really. I feel like my role is really giving them the tools and the the connections to reach out to someone who does know, like, you, John, Yvette Hurrigan, in the case of an attorney, so I have called Yvette in a couple situations and asked her, like, hey, I've got a client, even when it wasn't an attorney, I've got a client here that needs some treatment, where can I send this person?
And Yvette Hurrigan is she's the president of the Kentucky Lawyers Assistance Program here in Louisville.
She's the director of that. Yeah. Or John, I'll send
John
people
Walsh.
to John Walsh. Yeah. I think a lot of those two people have a lot of respect for both of them. And actually, I still go to a meeting with John. So
that's right.
I still do John's group once a week. And he's sold me on this brain paint. I don't know if he's talked to you about this.
Yeah, actually, we used to use that in our treatment center.
Yeah.
So, I know that a lot of people have had some success with it. So,
yeah. So,
hey,
so back to
keep doing it, man.
Yeah, whatever works,
Yeah.
I told him I was willing to give it a shot, and I think I've seen some results. He thinks I have. So, but yeah, as far as what I look for in a treatment program,
it's probably pretty smart. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll leave that up to you guys. Y'all are the experts in that field. So,
just like you don't want me going to your trial, man.
I don't want you representing.
I might show up in
court.
tennis shoes and the jeans. It wouldn't be good.
Yeah, I don't want you defending me, so I won't step on your toes either.
Good deal. Well, Daniel, man, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Zach. I enjoy being here.
Yeah, and if you know someone struggling with an addiction or searching for answers, subscribe and tune into Recovery Radio each week for the most up-to-date information from leading experts. You can listen to Recovery Radio wherever you get your podcasts. And before I sign off, if you're looking for inpatient or outpatient drug or alcohol rehab, Visit landmarkrecovery.com to learn about their substance abuse programs that are saving lives and empowering families. And until next week, I'm Zach Crouch with Recovery Radio, wishing you well.
Thank you for tuning in to Recovery Radio. New content for this program is available every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time, with all episodes available on demand on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel and through our content partners, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Google Play podcasts. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review so we can continue to create quality content to help save 1 million lives in the next 100 years. You don't need to struggle through addiction alone. Live the life you dreamed on the road to recovery.